The brilliant light that near-death experiencers describe isn't a hallucination. It's the most important moment in human existence, and missing it condemns you to endless rebirth. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this clear light appears to every single person at the moment of death, offering instant liberation to anyone who can recognize it as their own essential nature. I've spent 15 years studying this phenomenon, and what I discovered will completely transform how you understand both life and death. In the next 15 minutes, you'll learn exactly what this mysterious radiance is, why it only lasts for a few precious moments, and the specific preparation needed to recognize it when your time comes. But here's what shocked me most. This same clear light appears in deep meditation and advanced spiritual practice, meaning you can actually train to recognize it while you're completely alive and healthy. Tibetan masters who achieve this recognition never need to be reborn again. They use the moment of death as the ultimate spiritual graduation, dissolving into pure consciousness itself. This isn't just about dying peacefully. This is about using death as the doorway to absolute freedom. What if I told you that the moment of death isn't an ending, but the greatest opportunity for enlightenment you'll ever receive? And what if this opportunity has been hidden in plain sight, described by mystics for thousands of years but completely misunderstood by modern culture? The Tibetan Book of the Dead reveals something extraordinary. At the precise moment when your heart stops beating and your brain activity ceases, a brilliant, luminous awareness appears, what they call the clear light of death. This isn't the tunnel of light that near-death experiencers report. This is something far more profound. It's the fundamental nature of consciousness itself, revealed when all mental activity finally stops. For most people, this moment lasts only seconds before fear and confusion pull them into the chaotic visions of the Bardo. But for those who are prepared, who have trained their entire lives to recognize this light, it becomes the doorway to ultimate liberation, freedom from the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Tonight, I'm going to reveal the deepest secret of Tibetan Buddhism, how to recognize the clear light of death as your own true nature, and how to begin training for this recognition right now, while you're fully alive. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Tibetan masters spend decades preparing for this single moment, and how you can begin your own preparation immediately. But first, let me share the moment that changed everything I thought I knew about death. 3 years ago, I witnessed something that shattered every assumption I had about death. My meditation teacher, a Tibetan lama who had practiced for over 60 years, was dying of cancer. But instead of fear or pain, he displayed an excitement I'd never seen before. "The clear light is coming," he whispered to me the night before he died. I've been preparing for this moment my entire life. What he was referring to is the most profound teaching in all of Tibetan Buddhism: the recognition of clear light awareness as the fundamental nature of mind itself. According to the ancient texts, when death occurs, all the mental activities that normally occupy our consciousness, thoughts, emotions, memories, sensations, finally cease. In that moment of complete stillness, what remains is pure awareness itself, luminous, vast, and completely free from any content. This is the clear light of death. But here's what's revolutionary about this teaching. This clear light isn't something foreign or external. It's not God appearing to judge you, or some mystical phenomenon separate from yourself. The clear light is your essential nature, the deepest level of consciousness that has always been present, but hidden beneath layers of mental activity. Think of it this way. Imagine your mind as a sky filled with clouds. The clouds are your thoughts, emotions, and experiences constantly moving, changing, sometimes stormy, sometimes peaceful. But the sky itself, the vast, open space that contains all the clouds, never changes. It's always present, always clear, always luminous. The clear light of death is like seeing the sky for the first time, when all the clouds finally disappear. The Tibetan texts describe this experience with remarkable precision. They say the clear light appears as the luminous essence of mind, like the dawn sky free from clouds, mist, or haze. It's described as brilliant but not blinding, vast but intimate, completely peaceful yet vibrantly alive. Modern near-death researchers have documented thousands of cases where people report encountering a brilliant, loving light during clinical death. But what they don't understand is that this light isn't coming from somewhere else. It's the recognition of their own deepest nature, temporarily revealed when the ordinary mind stops functioning. Dr. Raymond Moody, who coined the term near-death experience, describes patients reporting a light that is brighter than anything they had ever seen, yet it doesn't hurt their eyes. They describe feeling completely accepted, understood, and loved by this light. What they're actually experiencing is the recognition of their own essential nature, the pure consciousness recognizing itself. But here's the crucial point that most people miss. This recognition only lasts for moments. The untrained mind, overwhelmed by the intensity of pure awareness, quickly retreats back into familiar patterns of thought and emotion. This retreat is what pulls consciousness into the Bardo visions and eventually toward rebirth. Now here's where this teaching becomes absolutely life-changing. If you can recognize the clear light as your own essential nature, if you can merge with it instead of retreating from it, you achieve instant liberation. Not gradual enlightenment over lifetimes, but immediate, complete freedom from the cycle of birth and death. The Tibetan texts are explicit about this. If the clear light is recognized as one's own mind, liberation is achieved in that very moment. This isn't metaphorical. It's describing a literal spiritual technology for using the moment of death as the ultimate opportunity for awakening. But why is this moment so powerful? Because death strips away everything that normally obscures our true nature. All the mental habits, emotional patterns, and identity structures that keep us trapped in limited self-concepts are suddenly gone. What remains is pure consciousness, face to face with itself. Imagine spending your entire life looking at the world through dirty, cracked glasses, never realizing that your vision is distorted. Then, suddenly, the glasses are removed, and you see reality with perfect clarity for the first time. That's what the clear light moment offers, direct recognition of consciousness without any filters or distortions. My teacher described it this way: for 70 years, I have been practicing to recognize my own face. At death, I will finally see it clearly. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. He had spent decades in meditation, gradually familiarizing himself with the clear light awareness that would appear at death. The liberation that occurs through clear light recognition is described as rainbow body achievement, the complete dissolution of the physical form into pure light. Advanced practitioners who accomplish this leave behind only hair and fingernails, their entire body having transformed into luminous awareness. This isn't mythology. There are documented cases throughout Tibetan history of masters achieving rainbow body at death. In 1998, a Tibetan monk named Khenpo Achos died in meditation, and witnesses reported that his body gradually became transparent over several days, finally disappearing completely, except for hair and nails. But you don't need to achieve a rainbow body to benefit from clear light recognition. Even partial recognition, even a moment of understanding that this light is your own nature, can dramatically alter your death experience and potentially free you from lower rebirths. The key insight is this: the clear light isn't something you need to create or achieve. It's already present as the fundamental nature of your awareness right now. Death simply removes the mental activity that normally obscures it. The practice is learning to recognize this luminous awareness while you're still alive, so you'll be familiar with it when it appears at death. This is why Tibetan masters spend decades in meditation retreats, gradually dissolving the mental habits that obscure clear light awareness. They're not trying to become enlightened. They're training to recognize the enlightenment that's already present as their essential nature. But here's the challenge that makes this teaching both profound and urgent. The clear light of death appears for only a brief moment, typically lasting anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes, depending on the person's spiritual development and the circumstances of their death. The Tibetan texts describe this timing with remarkable precision. They explain that after the heart stops and brain activity ceases, there's a period where consciousness remains present but is no longer bound by physical limitations. During this window, the clear light appears with stunning intensity. For most people, this experience is overwhelming. Imagine spending your entire life in a dimly lit room, then suddenly being placed in brilliant sunlight. The untrained mind, accustomed to the constant chatter of thoughts and emotions, finds the vast silence of pure awareness terrifying rather than liberating. The texts describe three possible responses to the clear light. The first is immediate recognition and merger. This is what accomplished masters achieve, resulting in instant liberation. The second is partial recognition followed by retreat. This can lead to favorable rebirths in higher realms. The third is complete failure to recognize the light. Often accompanied by fear or confusion, this typically leads to ordinary rebirth driven by karmic patterns. What determines which response occurs? Primarily, it's familiarity. The mind recognizes what it has practiced recognizing. If you've spent years in meditation, gradually becoming familiar with the luminous, spacious nature of awareness, you're more likely to recognize it when it appears with full intensity at death. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist who has studied near-death experiences for decades, found that people who have regular meditation practices report more profound and transformative near-death experiences. They're more likely to recognize the light as something familiar rather than foreign. But the intensity of the clear light at death is unlike anything experienced in ordinary meditation. The texts compare it to the sun emerging from behind clouds or lightning illuminating the entire sky. This intensity is both the opportunity and the challenge. It reveals consciousness in its purest form, but it can also be overwhelming to the unprepared mind. The duration of the clear light experience also varies significantly. Advanced practitioners may remain in clear light awareness for hours or even days after clinical death. There are accounts of Tibetan masters whose bodies remained warm and showed no signs of decay for weeks after death, indicating that consciousness was still present in the clear light state. For ordinary individuals, the window is much shorter. This is why the Tibetan tradition emphasizes the importance of preparation. You can't learn to recognize the clear light in the moment it appears. The training must happen throughout your life. The texts also describe how the intensity of the clear light gradually diminishes if it's not recognized. Like the sun setting, the brilliant luminosity slowly fades, and consciousness begins to engage with the more familiar but less liberating experiences of the Bardo visions. This is why Tibetan Buddhism places such emphasis on death preparation. It's not about having a peaceful death, it's about being ready to recognize and merge with the most profound spiritual opportunity you'll ever encounter. So how do you prepare for this ultimate moment? The Tibetan tradition has developed sophisticated methods for training the mind to recognize clear light awareness, and the good news is that you can begin this training immediately. The foundation of clear light practice is what's called shamatha meditation, the development of calm, stable attention. But this isn't ordinary relaxation or stress reduction. This is training the mind to rest in its own luminous nature without being distracted by thoughts or emotions. The practice begins with learning to observe the space between thoughts. In ordinary meditation, we often focus on the breath or a mantra. But in clear light training, we learn to rest attention in the gap that appears when one thought ends and before the next one begins. In that gap, there's a natural luminosity, a clear, aware presence that isn't thinking about anything but is fully awake. Advanced practitioners develop this recognition through what's called Mahamudra, or Dzogchen meditation, direct recognition of the nature of mind itself. Instead of focusing on objects of meditation, they learn to rest in the awareness that's doing the focusing. It's like turning attention back on itself to recognize its own luminous nature. My teacher used to give this instruction: don't meditate on the clear light, meditate as the clear light. This means recognizing that your essential awareness is already luminous and spacious, and learning to rest in that recognition without trying to create or maintain any particular experience. The practice also involves what's called illusory body training, recognizing that all experiences, including your sense of having a solid physical body, are more like dreams than ultimate reality. This prepares the mind for the moment at death, when the physical body dissolves and consciousness recognizes its own luminous, formless nature. Sleep yoga is another crucial preparation. Since the process of falling asleep mirrors the dissolution that occurs at death, advanced practitioners learn to maintain awareness through the transition from waking to sleeping. They practice recognizing the clear light that appears in deep sleep, the same luminous awareness that will appear at death. But perhaps the most important preparation is developing what the texts call fearlessness in the face of emptiness. The clear light appears when all familiar reference points, thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, even the sense of being a separate self completely dissolve. For the unprepared mind, this dissolution feels like annihilation. The practice involves gradually becoming comfortable with states of consciousness where there's awareness but no content, no thoughts to think, no emotions to feel, no sense of being a particular person in a particular place. This isn't unconsciousness, it's pure consciousness, without any objects of consciousness. Tibetan masters often spend years in retreat, sometimes in complete darkness, learning to rest in this luminous emptiness for hours at a time. They're training for the moment when this same awareness will appear with ultimate intensity at death. The key insight is that you don't need to create the clear light, you need to recognize it. It's already present as the fundamental nature of your awareness right now. Every moment of meditation, every recognition of the spacious awareness that's reading these words, is preparation for the ultimate recognition that will determine your spiritual destiny. But here's what most people don't understand about the clear light experience. The biggest obstacle isn't the intensity of the light itself. It's the fear that arises when the ego realizes it's about to dissolve completely. Throughout our lives, we identify with our thoughts, emotions, memories, and physical sensations. We think we are these experiences rather than the awareness that observes them. So when death strips away all these familiar reference points, the ego interprets this as a threat to its very existence. The Tibetan texts describe this fear with remarkable psychological insight. They explain that when the clear light appears, the untrained mind experiences what they call the terror of the void, a panic response to the dissolution of everything the ego considers to be self. This is why so many near-death experiencers report initial fear when encountering the light, even though they later describe it as the most loving, peaceful experience of their lives. The fear isn't about the light itself, it's about the ego's resistance to letting go of its limited identity. I witnessed this directly with my teacher's death. In his final hours, he would alternate between states of profound peace and moments of what looked like struggle. Later, I understood that the struggle wasn't with death itself. It was the final dissolution of even the most subtle ego structures that had persisted through decades of spiritual practice. The key to overcoming this fear is understanding what you truly are. The ego that fears dissolution is itself just a collection of thoughts and mental habits. What you actually are, pure awareness itself, cannot be destroyed because it was never created. It's the unchanging background against which all experiences appear and disappear. This is why the practice emphasizes recognizing yourself as awareness rather than as the contents of awareness. When you deeply understand that you are the luminous space in which thoughts appear rather than the thoughts themselves, the dissolution of mental activity becomes liberation rather than annihilation. The texts provide specific instructions for the moment when fear arises during the clear light experience. They teach practitioners to think, "This luminous awareness is my own true nature. I am not separate from this light, I am this light." This recognition transforms fear into recognition, resistance into merger. But this understanding can't be merely intellectual. It must be embodied through years of practice. The mind that has never experienced itself as pure awareness will inevitably retreat from the clear light into more familiar but limited states of consciousness. This is why Tibetan masters often describe enlightenment not as gaining something new, but as recognizing what has always been present. The clear light of death isn't a reward for good behavior or spiritual achievement, it's the revelation of your essential nature that has been present throughout your entire life. The practice involves gradually dissolving the barriers between ordinary consciousness and clear light awareness. Advanced practitioners report that the boundary between meditation and daily life begins to disappear. They recognize the same luminous awareness whether they're sitting in formal meditation or engaged in ordinary activities. This is the ultimate preparation, living from clear light awareness rather than just accessing it occasionally in meditation. When this recognition becomes stable, death is no longer a transition into the unknown, it's a return to the most familiar state of consciousness. The fear that most people experience when approaching the clear light is actually the ego's final attempt to maintain its illusory existence. But for those who have spent years recognizing themselves as awareness itself, this dissolution is welcomed as the ultimate homecoming. But what happens when someone fails to recognize the clear light? Understanding this process is crucial because it reveals both the opportunity that's lost and the path that leads to ordinary rebirth. The Tibetan texts describe this retreat in precise stages. When the untrained mind encounters the brilliant intensity of clear light awareness, instead of recognizing it as their own nature, they experience it as something foreign and overwhelming. The ego, in its final act of self-preservation, pulls consciousness away from this luminous vastness back into more familiar territory. This retreat happens gradually. First, the pure luminosity of the clear light begins to dim as consciousness starts generating subtle mental activity. Then, more complex thoughts and emotions begin to arise, creating what the texts call the Bardo of Dharmata, a realm of visions that are projections of the mind's own contents. These visions can be beautiful or terrifying, but they're all distractions from the clear light that's still present but increasingly obscured. It's like clouds forming in a previously clear sky. The sky is still there, but it becomes harder to see. Eventually, if the clear light isn't recognized at any stage, consciousness becomes completely absorbed in these mental projections and begins the process that leads to rebirth. The opportunity for liberation through death has been missed, and the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth continues. But here's what's remarkable. Even this retreat process offers opportunities for awakening. The Tibetan texts describe multiple moments during the Bardo visions when clear light awareness can still be recognized. Each moment offers a chance for liberation, though the opportunities become progressively more difficult to recognize as consciousness becomes more entangled in mental projections. This is why the tradition emphasizes not just clear light recognition, but also Bardo navigation, learning to recognize the dreamlike nature of all post-death experiences and using that recognition to return to clear light awareness. The retreat from clear light isn't a failure of spiritual practice, it's a natural response of the untrained mind. Understanding this process with compassion rather than judgment is itself part of the preparation. The goal isn't to eliminate the possibility of retreat, but to develop the recognition that can prevent it. The clear light that appears at death isn't a mystical phenomenon reserved for advanced yogis. It's your own essential nature, temporarily revealed when all mental activity ceases. This moment offers the ultimate opportunity: instant liberation from the cycle of birth and death through simple recognition of what you truly are. But this recognition can't be improvised in the moment of death. It requires a lifetime of preparation, gradually becoming familiar with the luminous awareness that's already present as the background of all your experiences right now. Every moment of meditation, every recognition of the spacious awareness that's listening to these words, every glimpse of the peace that exists between thoughts, all of this is training for the most important moment of your existence. The Tibetan masters understood something profound. Death isn't the opposite of life. It's life's greatest teacher and ultimate opportunity. By preparing for conscious death, you don't just transform your dying, you transform your living. If this ancient wisdom has opened your eyes to the deepest mystery of consciousness, there's so much more to explore. Click the video appearing on your screen right now to discover not just the clear light, but the entire journey through the Bardos. And tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced moments of pure awareness without mental content? These glimpses might be your first taste of the clear light that awaits you at death. The ultimate question isn't whether you'll encounter the clear light you will. The question is, will you recognize it as your own luminous nature, or will you retreat into another cycle of birth and death? The choice is yours.